Anyway, NFL.
Let's talk about the NFL, because I think that everybody was really out on this trade. I think in part that people like to just confirm their priors, and I think that people's priors are the Bears are a dumb organization, and so when the Bears do something, people like to be like, "Oh, lol's Bears." I think that this was a perfectly reasonable trade. So I think that similar to kind of the discussion that we just had about would you trade an early second round dynasty pick, would you trade a mid second round dynasty pick, I think that, the chances of the Bears drafting a superstar is higher with the second round pick that they just traded away to the Pittsburgh Steelers than it is Chase Claypool. And the absolute upside outcome is that you draft a superstar and you have them cost controlled for 4 years plus potential franchise tag versus now they have them for a 1.5 plus potential franchise tag. So that's fair. The ceiling is definitely higher. And I'm usually the Chase ceiling guy. I guess the reason why I think this deal is fine is that, to me, everything should be viewed through the lens of Justin Fields' evaluation, Justin Fields' development. The two most important things the Bears should be factoring every decision through right now is Justin Fields good? And if we think he's good, how can we help him be as good as he can be? That's so crucial to me, everything with Justin Fields. And in fantasy, the replacement level is much higher than the replacement level for an NFL player. In fantasy, we're talking about, if you don't score 14 points per game, we don't really care about you. In the NFL, it's not that. It's can you draw coverage? Can you be a guy that wins this matchup? Can you be a factor on an NFL football field? And the Bears just didn't have NFL players. N'Keal Harry is not an NFL player. Equinemius St. Brown, not an NFL player. Velas fucking Jones, these guys just aren't NFL players. Chase Claypool might not matter in fantasy. He might not be a superstar. He's probably not a wide receiver one of an offense in a really good offense. But he's clearly an NFL player. He's clearly an NFL starter. He has skill sets that can contribute to create offense. And so to me, I'm willing to sacrifice that little bit of ceiling and say, okay, in order for us to evaluate and develop Fields properly, we need to put him around actual NFL players at positions of need. And so, to me, of all of the bad trades in the world, they didn't go trade for a fucking linebacker. They didn't trade for a guard.
They traded away linebacker.
Right. They didn't trade a running back. People were like, oh, Roquan Smith is better than Chase Claypool. Absolutely. Roquan Smith is better at playing linebacker than Chase Claypool is playing at wide receiver. The difference is they would have had to pay Roquan Smith a bunch of money to play a position that doesn't really matter that much anyways. Certainly doesn't matter in terms of evaluating your quarterback, because nothing else about your team matters if your quarterback is not good. And if Justin Fields is not the answer, then you need to redo it with another quarterback. Chase Claypool is a lot more impactful to them being able to evaluate Justin Fields. He's a cost-controlled player, and he's a real NFL player at a position that really matters in the NFL largely, and especially matters for their position right now as a franchise that they really, really need. And so to me, if they look at the 2023 wide receivers and they say, you know what, we think the superstars are going in the first round. We just want to secure having a real NFL player. We're going to do it in a second-round pick. They still have their own first. They still have the Baltimore second. They can still draft another receiver. They can still draft an O-lineman with those picks. I think it's a totally reasonable deal.
Yeah, in the NFL, it would be better off if they were a really good team. Let's say, for instance, this team already has a bona fide wide receiver one. Let's say Darnell Mooney is actually awesome. Then in that case, they should absolutely not be trading for Chase Claypool. But they don't have NFL wide receivers. And that's a big problem for an offense. And that's a big problem for Justin Fields. If the reason they're not passing the ball at even a league worst rate, they're passing the ball at a league worst rate in 1950. They need to be passing the ball at a league worst rate in 2022. They need to pass 30 passes.
Right.
Because you need to do that in order to win games, even at the bare minimum level on a regular basis. Justin Fields is probably never going to lead the league in pass attempts. Justin Fields needs to pass at Lamar Jackson levels, or they're not going to win a lot of football games. No, he doesn't have to be as good as Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is one of the best quarterbacks.
Yeah, they need to be the Eagles. They just need to be a normal team.
Yeah, that's a great point. So Chase Claypool, he's an NFL player. And then this is one of the discussions we had a while ago about the which team was it? The Kansas City Chiefs, and how, Sky Moore isn't getting on the field, but he's playing with NFL players, so that's not really a huge indictment. That's not what's happening in Chicago. They don't have NFL players. They need some. Sure, you could draft a superstar A.J. Brown level prospect at the top of round 2 next year in a in the 2023 draft. That's possible. That's what the Tennessee Titans did. They drafted A.J. Brown at the beginning of the second round. He was 211, I think, or 210 or somewhere thereabouts. So it's possible to get a superstar there. I'm not saying that. But there's a lot of second-round picks that are not NFL players. And surrounding Justin Fields with one of those is detrimental to your quarterback's development. The fact that you can get Chase Claypool today helps him develop over the last 8 weeks of the season or 9 weeks of the season. So I'm into it. Second-round picks, just for instance, since 2003 to 2019, we have 75 second-round picks. There's a lot of second-round picks. The historical hit rate of those players is 28 out of 75 have hit a top 24 season. We're not talking about superstars here. We're talking about like decent NFL producers. That's a 37% hit rate. So we are taking Chase Claypool, who probably has a higher hit rate than that, I think anyway, of hitting a top 24 season. I think he's probably more probable than 37% chance or historical hit rate. So I think you're getting like kind of a median outcome or a little bit better right away. Sure, you're not getting the tail where you're getting a genuine superstar. Chase Claypool is not Megatron as he was formerly billed. He's not even DK Metcalf, which was the popular year 2 comp. But anyways, so then we have to also consider that they know what they're getting. And Chicago has a history of drafting not such great players already in their first year.
They literally forfeited their third-round pick the second that they selected Velus Jones this year. They just decided we would rather not have a third-round pick.
They could have picked anyone in the third round. They picked Velus Jones. So
who literally should not have been drafted.
I'm not going to run out to best.
Wouldn't have been a good 7th round pick.
This is the front office that is destined to pick A.J. Brown in the second round. I just don't believe that's true. If we look at my prospect grades just across the second round, we have 15 bulletproof prospects. We have 19 coin flips, 11 long shots, and 29 bust tier prospects drafted in the second round. Out of these 75, that's a 20% chance of just throwing a dart and hitting a bulletproof prospect, a 25% chance of throwing a dart and hitting a coin flip one, 11% at 15% at hitting a long shot, and 39% chance of just hitting a bust if you're just throwing a dart at a wall at a second round pick. So, and that's just their prospect tiers. Then if you break it down to the grades, sure, if they draft a bulletproof wide receiver in round 2, you're looking at 10 out of 15. That's a 67% hit rate. That's pretty good. Like if you could get one of those guys, except they drafted Velus Jones. They're not looking at the same things we're looking at at all. They're looking at we are reading an English.
Velus Jones, by the way, who is older than Chase Claypool.
It's brutal.
Currently,
coin flips they've hit historically 9 out of 19. That's 47%. Long shots 3 out of 11. That's 27%. Actually, the busts in the second round have been doing pretty good. 6 out of 29 at a 20% hit rate. By doing pretty good, I mean relative to the other rounds where they're like on average about a 12% hit rate. So they're out hitting in the second round. Nonetheless, these are not good hit rates. You can do a lot of damage to your quarterback's development by picking players that are not good, by surrounding him with N'Keal Harry and Equanimity St. Brown and Darnell fucking Mooney and all these guys that are just not good at football.
The other issue is like there's compounding effects to not knowing what you have, right? Like if you draft a wide receiver in the second round and it's Schrodinger's wide receiver, like you don't for sure know if they're good. You don't know for sure if they're bad, but like you've invested in them enough that like then that blocks you from doing other things, right? Because you're like, oh, this is part of our answer, right? So you're probably not going to sign the superstar free agent and draft, the wide receiver early. You're probably not going to draft a wide receiver in the first and draft a wide receiver in the second. You could, maybe you even should, but that's just not usually how teams operate. With Chase Claypool, you know exactly what he is. You know that he's part of your solution in your wide receiver room. You also know he's not the final solution for your wide receiver room. So it frees you up to do other things where you take care of one thing now, which is getting NFL players. And then you're still like, ideally you have an offense where you have, Chase Claypool as like your big slot wide receiver. You have Mooney as your stretch Z wind sprint wide receiver. And then you still have that superstar X wide receiver next to the both of them. And that will certainly make Chase Claypool not a fantasy value, but in terms of the Bears team building, that's ideally what you want to be doing. The other thing I will say too is like there aren't that many positions that like really matter in the NFL, in particular where the Bears are at, right? Like most of the positions that we say are quote unquote unimportant, like guard and interior defensive line, off-ball linebackers, safeties, all that stuff. Those things matter on the margins, right? Those things matter on teams that want to compete. Running backs, those things matter if you're ready to win a Super Bowl and you already have all the important positions. That's why you're ready to win a Super Bowl. The Bears are not that. They don't have an O-line. They don't have wide receivers. They don't have edge rushers. They don't have the positions that matter. So the idea that you're just going to say, well, we're for sure taking a wide receiver in the second round, like, you don't know for sure that the wide receivers that you'll want, the wide receivers that you have rated highest, are actually going to be there. The wide receivers that fit your scheme, they might not be there. And so then what are you going to do? There's other positions if need, right? That's fair. You can default to them, but then you're still stuck without a wide receiver, and you really need a wide receiver. And so are you going to end up getting trapped taking a wide receiver who doesn't fit, a wide receiver that you don't want? That's not good. You don't want to be reaching on players. So I think this just gives them more flexibility. It's cost controlled. I like it, and I like it for Fields. I think that it's a strong idea, and we'll see what their final outcome is here. But to me, overall, what they did, where they get off Roquan Smith and his future contract, they're able to go get Claypool for a second round pick. They got a second round pick back for Roquan. I know that they traded an earlier one, and they got back. They also got a fifth. I think honestly, it's a pretty good job by them.
Yeah, I'm completely fine with it. I don't think it's a home run by any stretch. I'm
No.
not like, oh man, look at the Bears, they're awesome. But I don't think it's like how they're getting chastised in the social media sphere right now is a touch unfair, I think. And I also
think it's good for the Steelers for what it's worth, because they're in a
great
different spot.
job.
The Steelers don't need a wide receiver, right? Like you can always use a third, but they're fine. They have Deontay Johnson locked up. They have George Pickens locked up. They have a really good tight end. Like, they're okay. So if they can just get a second round pick that they can use on whatever, right? It's a different situation.
Well, the Steelers won the trade without question. But I don't think it's like a massacre and that the Bears have forfeited their future by trading for Chase Claypool. I think the most important thing is, do we have a quarterback in Justin Fields? And I think having Chase Claypool on the team at least gives you some indication whether or not you have Justin Fields as a franchise quarterback, because it should allow them to pass at a reasonable rate to see if Justin Fields is even good. And maybe they don't have to pass 9.6 or whatever yards down the field on average. That seems a little extreme. Anyway.